Here's a question for you. If you were to write down everything you associate with Islam, what would that list include? Perhaps the Kaaba, the holiest Muslim site and focal point of Hajj? Most likely Muhammad, the first prophet and founder of the Islamic faith. Of course, there's the Qur'an, Islam's holy religious text. Maybe there are some countries on your list. Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Indonesia. They're all Muslim countries, so that makes sense, right? Then how about 9/11? Or the Taliban? Or ISIS? I mean, ISIS have got Islamic in their name, so how much more Muslim can you get than that? Now, an overwhelming majority of Muslims would argue that terrorism has nothing to do with Islam, pointing to the fact that the religion forbids such acts of violence. But actually, that's not something we're going to debate today. The point is, when it comes to listing everything both Muslims and non-Muslims associate with Islam, it doesn't take long until you reach provocative examples. So sure, people might associate the subjugation of women in Islamic State with Islam. But then how does that fit alongside the beliefs in Islamic feminism? How Islamic are the teachings of Nation of Islam prophet Elijah Muhammad, who said that the white man is the devil and the black man God? When Shia Islam teaches that Ali is the divine successor of Muhammad, does that represent Islam? Was Islamic philosophy Islamic at all? Or was it just philosophy, developed in a period of Islamic cultural dominance? Now, I'm far from qualified to answer any of these questions. But the question I do want to try and answer is, when there are so many varied associations and conflicting viewpoints by Muslims and non-Muslims alike, many of whom have their own agendas, have different cultural values, and have been exposed to the religion in different ways, how then do you define Islam? When we're tackling a question like this, it helps to focus on a clear association that 99% of people would share. And the most obvious one for us is Islamic countries. To put it simply, there are certain countries that most people would associate with Islam, even if they disagreed with the label Islamic or Muslim country. Now, I'd like to leave what makes a Muslim country for another video. But suffice it to say that some people believe that a theocracy like Iran is an Islamic country, but a majority Muslim but secular country like Albania is not. So to simplify things and tackle that big old elephant in the room, we can probably agree that the majority of people at least associate the Middle East with Islam, and vice versa. But that association doesn't give us a definition. And anyway, out of the 8 countries that contain 50% of the world's Muslim population, only 3, Iran, Turkey and Egypt, could be considered part of the Middle East, even when we're using the most generous definition. The other 5, Indonesia, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan and Nigeria, are not only not in the Middle East, they're not even Arabic speaking. In fact, only one of our 8, Egypt, is. Gone are the days when we could talk about the Islamic world. Today's Muslim community has long burst its banks, and therefore clinging on to the idea that the Middle East somehow sums up Islam is outdated. Muslims can be found in every country, from China to Chile, Australia to England. In fact, there is no part of the world where Islam in some form has not spread to. And this worldwide community has sparked new discussions on Islam's relation to issues like women's rights, tolerance and freedom of expression. Crucially, many influential Muslims in the 21st century come from Europe, the US or Australia, and many of them will have never set foot in the Middle East, however you define it. And they will rarely be directly involved in theological matters. They will be actors, politicians and lawyers who directly or indirectly impact the very global Muslim world. So can we use a map to define Islam? Well, no. But if you look beyond the Middle East and really unfold it, you can begin to appreciate Islam as a diverse, adaptable, and ever-evolving faith. By now you might be asking yourself why we're going to the trouble of bringing geography into our definition at all. Because while we know there are Muslims living everywhere from Belgium to the Bahamas, all of them will associate themselves with one of two denominations, Sunni or Shia. If we know which of these sects a Muslim belongs to, we can hazard a pretty good guess to what their rituals are and what they believe in. And that gives us a pretty good definition of Islam, right? Well, not really, no. Let's look into this a little deeper. It is true that 98% of Muslims identify as Sunni or Shiite, with 80% Sunni, 18% Shiite, and the remaining 2% falling into smaller sects. While this division has its roots in the early years of Islamic history, and was brought about by the question of who should succeed the Prophet Muhammad as leader of the religion, Ali or Abu Bakr, you could be excused for believing that Sunnism and Shiism holds great relevance in modern-day Islam. After all, these sects are often cited in explanations of geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. Something along the lines of Saudi Arabia is Sunni, Bahrain is Shiite, and that's why they hate each other's guts. But while Shiism and Sunnism did have a role in the formation of these nation-states, Muslim countries' international relations is more complex than what side you're on. As we discussed earlier, Islam does not define the Middle East, and the Middle East certainly does not define Islam. The truth is, while the difference between Sunnis and Shiites is significant, they're often overstated. Sure, they have some different rituals, there are small variations when praying, and they often, but not always, attend different mosques. Recognizing these subtle differences can be useful in understanding how Islam came to where it is today, and these differences are sufficient enough to create separate communal identities. But a Sunni Muslim that prays 5 times a day has way more in common with a Shiite Muslim that also prays 5 times a day than with a non-practicing Sunni. Just like Catholicism and Protestantism don't define Christianity, Shiism and Sunnism don't define Islam. We covered this a little in the first part of the video, but since people hold such a strong association between Islam and Arab people, I think it's worth pointing out the obvious. Non-Arab Muslims vastly outnumber Arab Muslims. So now we've got that out the way, we can ask, why do so many people use Arabs to define Islam? Well, stereotypes become stereotypes for a reason, and in this case it's pretty simple. Islam originated in Arabia, and the Qur'an is in Arabic. And because so much of Islam's golden age, between the 8th and 14th centuries, was rooted in Arab culture, it's natural for people's perception of Islam to be disproportionately influenced by what went on during this period. Scholarship from the dawn of Islam has been dominated by Arabic, and similar to Christianity's relationship with Latin, Muslim people's lingua franca is Arabic. And a 14,000-year-old legacy has become a contemporary issue. Local variations of Islam, very often adapted from Sufism, are under constant pressure to conform to uniform standards. Islam doesn't have a Vatican as such, a global central body that can standardize Islamic ritual and law. And though Arabs and Arabic don't define Islam, their culture and scholarship will likely fill the void of a caliphate for some time to come. There are a whole load of things that people associate with Islam, like archaeology, war, clothing, science, prayer ritual, that we don't have time to talk about, and I hope to cover these in depth in a future video. But for now, let's go back to our original question. How do you define Islam? Well, for those of us only interested in studying Islam as a discipline, whether that be the theology in scripture, anthropology, or politics, anything that can be conceivably associated with the religion defines the field of study. That means somewhere like the Middle East helps define our understanding of Islam, even if that's by asserting the connection between the two is flimsier than most people believe, as I did earlier. And yes, that means that countries, terrorism, Arabic, Sunnism and Shiism, Muhammad, the Kaaba, the Qur'an, women's rights, all contribute to the overall picture, even if it doesn't give us a definition. The truth is, answering the question of what defines Islam is more meaningful for a believing Muslim than for someone who is not. Faith is extremely personal, and it can be essential for believers to understand its boundaries, to answer, at least in their own mind, what is Islamic and what is not. So what defines Islam? Well, that's up to you. But since we're talking about a religion that's 1400 years old, diverse and ever-evolving, you can pretty much guarantee that there won't be many with the same answer. If you enjoyed this Why Curious video, then please subscribe and hit the bell notification so you know exactly when we release the next one.